from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And good Thursday morning again from our virtual Mercy One studios in West Des Moines. We're happy to be with you this morning. Had a couple of changes in our lineup this morning, and we'll get to those as we introduce our guest. Gina, how are you this morning?
I'm well, Deacon Mike. It's a little chilly here in Iowa.
Yeah.
I just recently was down in Florida picking up my daughter from school, and the weather is significantly different here.
I'm sure it is. You know, I wanted to answer a question that you asked me last week. You had mentioned something about Trump having appointed something like 300 judges, federal judges, federal court.
One of our guests had mentioned that that President Trump had been really proactive in filling all these vacancies and had then appointed, would she say about a third of the... Or no, yeah, I appointed 300 federal judges, and I had asked you then when she was off the air, what kind of a percentage does that represent?
And my guess was that it was about a third, and so I looked it up for you. There are 870 Article 3 judges that the president can appoint. 9 in the Supreme Court, 179 for the courts of appeals, and 673 district court judges. Since he's appointed roughly 300, we were right. It was about a third right now that he has appointed. Okay. Now, those are Article 3 judges. Those are the ones that require the Senate confirmation. There are a number of other judges that are appointed by lower courts to hear various things, like, for example, bankruptcy judges. You know, they're appointed in a different fashion. But of the Article 3 judges, if he's appointed to 300, he has appointed. Actually, he's a little over a third, but anyway, so
that's a lot for one president.
That is, and of course he came into office, and there were a number of court vacancies when he came in, which surprised me that they allowed so many vacancies to exist. But I guess there was a political question in the latter year of the Obama administration as to whether or not they could get any of their judges approved if they nominated him. Because if you remember, Merrick Garland, who was their nominee for the Supreme Court, never brought up for a vote in the Senate. And
I see. Well, that also means that the U.S. Senate's working very hard to approve all those appointments and do the research and study all of the candidates.
That's one thing that the Republican leader of the Senate has been
proactive.
Proactive is the word on, and that's getting the judicial appointments confirmed. And he's been doing that all along, and good for him. We're getting some judges that, of course, I'm a conservative, so naturally I think that the judges that the president is appointing now are pretty good judges. And it's interesting that he did something that we've not seen done before. When he ran for office, he produced a list. And he said, these are the kind of judges that I want. And he's been appointing off that list. And now he's made some additions to the list, as time has gone on. But pretty much he's appointed according to that list. And that list was put together by some of the leading conservative thinkers and organizations that helped him put that together. So we're getting some pretty good judges. There'll be a clinker in there once in a while, but there always is. But we hope they're not too bad of a clinker.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like at least religious freedoms have been protected more often recently in the court decisions, and that's important to us.
I think so, and I think if you look back on it, one of the big reasons why he was elected was because of the courts, especially the Supreme Court.
Well,
I think a large number of people who voted for him didn't particularly like him, but voted for him because of the courts. They didn't want to lose the Supreme Court, and especially the Supreme Court. But all of these judicial appointments are important. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Supreme Court or a district court judge, because when the cases arrive at the Supreme Court, they arrive there shaped largely by how the judges in the lower courts handled them. And so the questions that come to the Supreme Court from these cases are fashioned early in the trial court setting, the district court setting. And it's important to realize that the United States Supreme Court, when it gets a case, just can't go pall-mall and decide they're going to rule on everything in that case. There's only certain things that are put before the court, and only those things that are put before the court basically are what they can rule on. So, they can't go fishing. They can't go fishing. So those lower courts are very important in how the cases are structured as they get up to the Supreme Court.
Very interesting. It's amazing to me how the system works and how it can affect each of our lives because of some case that started in some district way beyond where we live.
I'm thinking a couple of years ago there was a very pro-life district court judge that was hearing a case. We've seen these cases where they want to strike down a law that infringes on abortion opportunities, sure. And he knew that he had to do that the law was going to require him to rule in one way or another. But what he did was he allowed the people who were defending the law to bring in all their experts, have all of their briefs, have all of their information there in the court file, so that was available to the reviewing courts, because he figured that case may go to the Supreme Court. They had the information there that they could look beyond just the yes or no decision of the court. They could look into those other reasons, and it would allow the lawyers who would take that case up to argue from some of those opinions, medical opinions and things like that. So those lower courts are very, very important. I know everybody wants to look at what the Supreme Court people do, but those lower courts are very important. Of course, very few cases get to the Supreme Court. A lot of them end up at the courts of appeals, and they become final rulings in those cases. So they're all very important.
Very interesting. Interesting. Thanks for walking through that with me.
Yeah, you have a prayer for us to begin with?
Oh, you know what I do, but give me just a second to bring it up.
Oh, that's fine.
It's been quite a little scramble with our guests, and I forgot.
We've had one heck of a morning here.
That's okay. We have a great show for our listeners, and I have a prayer to open us up.
Okay, there was a point in time where we had no guests, and that was just about an hour ago. So, all right. But your prayer helped us get through it. All right, go ahead, Gina.
Prayer always helps us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. We're going to talk about some of the cases with the in front of the Supreme Court this week. We'll postpone that for a little bit. When we come back out of our break here, we're going to have Dr. Ann Hendershot. We've had her on before. We're going to have her back on, and we're going to talk about an article that she just wrote for the American Spectator. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Impoverished children break everyone's heart, but poverty seems like such a big problem. What can one person do to make a difference? For 17 years, Blessman International's passion has been to connect the resources of our donors with sustainable programs that impact the lives of impoverished children in South Africa. Our donors are feeding thousands of hungry children every week, providing basic water and sanitation for impoverished communities, and sharing the love of God in practical ways every day. Go to www.blessmaninternational.org and make your donation today. today.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the Sports Report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
What is the best gift ever? Well, some might say a Catholic education, and I agree. But if you think you can't afford Catholic education, think again. Apply for CTO, and you could receive up to half your tuition for kindergarten through 12th grade. More information is online, ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports 365 is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic with 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling Catholic graduate, and Dr. Todd Pedig. The Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610. Online at ashworthvision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. And we're back. And joining us once again is Professor of Sociology at Franciscan University, Dr. Ann Hendershot. Doctor, nice to have you with us again.
Great, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you were here just a couple months ago, and we got a lot of comment on your segment and what we talked about then, which was men's playing girls' sports, if you recall. And
that's right.
So you have. Oh, by the way, have you? Is there anything new on that topic other than we have a goofy judge in Connecticut now who's not letting the girls' attorneys refer to the boys as boys?
Right. They're not allowed to refer to the transgender girls who are biological boys. They are biological boys. They're not allowed to refer to them as biological boys or boys. They have to refer to them as transgender girls.
And, of course, that's the heart of the case. Is that they are male, and we discussed that before. Maleness has a certain advantage in those track situations over girls. So so that's what's going on there. That was the latest now, I guess. But anyway, you've taken, I guess, Governor Cuomo to task. You've written an article in the American Spectator dealing with his handling of the virus outbreak in New York.
Right. Yes. And it's since I've written that, it was a few days ago, I've learned that a few other governors have done this. What it is Governor Cuomo's director of health, with Cuomo's, I say he's complicit in this. On March 25th, they proclaimed that no one can be denied admission at a nursing home if they have a COVID diagnosis. And so if a nursing home resident is a resident and then goes into the hospital, the nursing home has to take that patient back or has to take the new patient, even though that person is infected with the coronavirus. And it has caused a huge problem in the nursing homes in New York. But what I've found out is Pennsylvania's director has done the same thing. The Secretary of Health in Pennsylvania did the exact same thing a week on March 18th. A state policy, Secretary of Health who is herself a transgender female, by the way. We have to get.
I was wondering about that. I saw her. I saw him or her, whatever. I saw her on TV, and I thought that's a rather odd-looking person.
Yes, but we can't say that.
No,
and that has nothing
and we won't.
to do with anything, as we know, Deacon. Nothing to do with anything. But I just thought, since we were talking about transgender, this is a proud transgender woman who used to be a biological man. I don't know the details of surgery, and that has nothing to do with it. But Pennsylvania has a rate of death. In Pennsylvania, I have the data here. I think it's almost 80% of all the deaths in the state of Pennsylvania are in nursing homes because they did the exact
Well, the interesting thing about Pennsylvania is that this woman who is the director took her mom out of a nursing home just before that edict was in place.
Exactly. Yes, it's 66% of all the deaths from COVID in Pennsylvania are nursing home deaths. And you're transgender Secretary of Health in the state of Pennsylvania is living in a hotel because the Secretary of Health in Pennsylvania realized how unsafe it would be to be in one of these nursing homes. But getting back to my article about Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo refuses to acknowledge this policy. And on the American Spectator site, I give a video of him just taken about a week ago where he kind of pretends he didn't know about it. But there are other videos, like in April, where he acknowledges that he knows about it. And I guess he knows enough about it where he has now rescinded it, but too little too late. And he kind of tried to blame the nursing homes themselves, saying that they just wanted the money from these patients, and that's why they took these patients. So Andrew gets a lot of accolades, Governor Andrew Cuomo, for being such a wonderful person. But all of us who are pro-life know so wonderful.
When this first started, I'd listen sometimes in the morning to his press conferences, and then I'd listen to Trump's in the afternoon, and of course the questions that came to them were like night and day. You know, the legitimate questions in the morning, gotcha questions in the afternoon. But Cuomo came across as being so cool and calm and having everything under control, and then this story breaks. And as you point out in your article, something like 58% of all the COVID-19 deaths in the state of New York occurred in nursing homes in New York City.
Yes. I mean, they were bad, and those numbers have changed slightly, of course, as more deaths, and the policy's been changed. But, you know, I was like you, Deacon. I was listening to Andrew Cuomo, and I've never been a fan because I'm a pro-life Catholic, of course. But I was impressed. He seemed to really care, and he even talked about our vulnerable seniors with such care and concern. And he said he announced this Matilda's Law, and I thought, oh, that's so sweet. He's naming the law after his mother. Matilda's Law, named for his mother, intended to protect New York's most vulnerable. And that's why I subtitled my article from Matilda's Law to It's Not My Job, because that's pretty much what he was saying to the nursing homes when they said, hey, we can't handle this. We can't handle all these patients. We're not an ER. We're not an ICU. And he said to them, that's not my job. And they were wanting more PPE. They didn't have enough masks. They didn't have enough isolation materials. And he said to them, that's not my job. That's your job. So I said, from Matilda's Law to it's not my job. And, you know, I think he's been somewhat disgraced because enough nursing home operators have said that they tried to email him and got form letters back saying how to reuse PPE, how to clean your mask. And it was so far beyond there. But I hate to just pick on Andrew, even though my article does, because he is complicit when there's so many other. I mean, no, there's not a lot of governors that did this, but Pennsylvania's health secretary as complicit as Andrew Cuomo. But I doubt that anyone will say anything because it's kind of like a protected class because she's a transgendered woman. So you don't really hear too much about this. I guess if you listen to most news, you won't hear anything about it.
Well, they're blue states is the reason why, I think.
Yes, they are.
It's interesting, Ann. That, good morning, Ann. I'm listening to your story, and I read your article, and I have some questions about the facilities that were created in New York specifically for the overflow, that they had plenty of beds for these nursing home residents who were infected, that they could have used those instead. Did you research anything about why those weren't facilitated in this situation?
I don't know why they weren't. Some have said that it's because Trump sent them, and it's similar to Samaritan's Purse. You know, Samaritan's Purse, that ministry, that was not used either. And that was in the middle of Central Park. You know, it could have been used, and all these nursing home patients could have been sent there because it was a great facility. So those were three facilities: Javits Center, the Comfort, the U.S. Naval Ship Comfort. None of them were used for these nursing home patients, and I'm not sure why, except some would say they were from Trump. I don't know that that's true. Samaritan's Purse wasn't really from Trump. But I think Cuomo just wanted the nursing home people to be kept aside because he knew that elderly people were especially vulnerable. We knew he knew that because that's why he came up with Matilda's Law, for heaven's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's hard for us to I can't guess. I can only tell you what others have said. I don't necessarily agree with because Trump said he wouldn't use it. But they were completely underutilized. They were hardly used at all. And Samaritan's Purse, they're trying to get off their property. I think it's probably gone by now because, you know, they don't accept same-sex marriage, so they can't really provide medical care. That's pretty much what de Blasio.
Well, and they're being taxed.
Yes, they are.
The
nurses
the state of New York is all these people that Cuomo asked, can you come help us, that relocated for a time in New York, the medical personnel, the people that set up the Samantha's Purse thing, they're all being taxed because under the New York law, whatever money they make while they're in New York is taxable in New York, regardless of who's paying for it. So a doctor that's taken a temporary leave to go to New York to help out, who's being still paid by the hospital that he works for in Cincinnati, he's got to pay a New York tax now.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And that law was designed to snag celebrities who come and do a play or athletes who come into the city and make huge amounts of money and they want to get their taxes. But these nurses that came and risked their lives to work in the ICU, they came from Chicago and Iowa and everywhere, they have to pay income tax now. So they'll have to file in the state of New York their income tax in addition to their federal. They'll have to pay state income tax, which seems so wrong. Another thing that I wrote about in the article about New York is that Black and Hispanic were overwhelmingly victims of COVID in these nursing homes. So where the nursing homes had the most deaths, 80 were those like in the Franklin Center in Queens. 80% of the residents are residents of color, and they suffered 45 deaths out of 315. And at Kings Harbor in the Bronx, that's even worse. 83% of the residents are Black or Hispanic, and there were 45 virus-related deaths. So you would think that the media would want to look at this carefully. They usually worry, especially about our minority population, the people who are historically discriminated against or oppressed, and nobody's paying any attention to that. So I thought this was really important to say. You know, he was always saying how much he cares about the Black and Hispanic residents of his state. But if you look at the demographics of death rates, they reveal that New York City's nursing homes with the highest percentages of African American Latinos were also the nursing homes with the highest death rates.
That seems unfair, honestly.
It does, yeah.
I'm glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah.
Now in Iowa, they're being very careful with I know you're based out of Iowa. The nursing homes. In fact, there's, you know the problem in the Tyson plant. but a couple of nursing home workers are married to Tyson plant workers. And they, Gates, this person who's in charge of nursing homes in the state, has said that anybody who is living with a person with COVID either needs to not come to work or live at the facility so there wouldn't be cross-contamination. And that's brilliant to do that. They're looking at their workers, too, and their vulnerability. Now, I think they're addressing the Tyson issue, but you haven't had that. I think it's like less than 5% of all the deaths of the state are in nursing homes. So if you're careful, this doesn't have to happen. And New York was not careful, and Pennsylvania was even less careful.
Yeah, I think it shows you the wisdom of those states that recognized right up front that there were certain vulnerable populations and worked to protect those populations.
Right.
Whereas others did not do that, and now they're reaping the rewards. We don't say rewards, but they're reaping what they sowed. And that's too bad for the people involved. One death is too many, but the way they've handled this in some cases, and not to get you off the topic here a little bit, but I think maybe this has dusted up Cuomo's star that maybe he might have been counting on for a replacement for Joe Biden, as a lot of Democrats are talking about.
Well, that's what I would imagine. People in my own family saying, well, wasn't Governor Cuomo impressive in those early days? He's so impressive. I'm like, oh, no, he's not impressive. There's nothing impressive about him. But you're right. I think this might have hurt him. If people know about it, unless you read the New York Post, you don't really find out much. And I know most of your listeners don't read the New York Post or read the American Spectator that I write for. But if you don't read those sites, we have data that are useful data, but they don't seem to make it into the New York Times or the Washington Post.
Right. And I write for the Wanderer, and a lot of people don't read that either. But there's been information about that in the Wanderer too, and at least in my column. But I had praised Cuomo a few months ago that I thought he was doing a good job. But it was.
Say I did too. He was impressive in the beginning.
Yeah, it was all a facade, I guess. Anyway, I'm looking at the clock here, and we're going to have to leave it about now because we're out of time. We appreciate you coming and talking about this. We've always enjoyed having you on, and I'm sure we're going to be having you again one of these days. We certainly appreciate it, and thank you very much for joining us, and God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you. Dr. Ann Hendershot, who is a professor of sociology at Franciscan University. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports 365 is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic with 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling Catholic graduate, and Dr. Todd Pedig. The Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, online at ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Doing what is challenging because it's right. That's Blackbird Investments. In 2013, Blackbird Investments was born from the inspiration of St. Kevin. When it comes to building real estate, they look for creative solutions by forming strategic alliances, creating energy-efficient buildings, and engaging with local craftsmen. At its core, Blackbird Investments believes in giving buildings a new life. BlackbirdInvest.com. Blackbird Investments, doing what is challenging because it's right.
Here's your forecast on Iowa Catholic Radio. A few low-pressure areas will be moving across our area for the next few days. Showers and thunderstorms will be possible this afternoon. We'll be in the low 70s. Scattered showers tonight and about 55. Little break from the rain tomorrow, mid-70s and mostly sunny, and then the rain will be back on Saturday. The weather is brought to you by Divine Treasures, a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton on Iowa Catholic Radio.
And we're back. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio in Des Moines, and we're joining you again via Skype. Gina is in her location, and I am in my location, and we're kind of Skyping this into the studio, so we hope we don't get too confused here. Sometimes I'm very easily confused. But anyway, our next guest is J.D. Flynn, who is the editor-in-chief of the Catholic News Agency. J.D., appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. I spent a lot of years living in Nebraska, so to be on an Iowa radio station, took a little bit of, I'm taking a little bit of flack from it from my friends in Nebraska, but I'm glad to be with you.
Yeah, Big Red. I spent 4 years in Nebraska. I went to Creighton, and so I'm familiar with the culture there.
Great. Well, it's good to talk with you.
Pope Benedict has an upcoming book, and in it he talks about something called the anti-Christian creed in our modern culture, as well as something he refers to as social excommunication. We don't have the book right now because I understand that the English version won't be available until sometime this fall, but you've got a preview of it somehow, so can you tell us what he is talking about with this anti-Christian creed and social excommunication?
Yeah, so the book that's coming out is a multi-volume biography of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI by Peter C. Wald, who is a writer who has done a lot of projects with Benedict XVI, a lot of interview projects with Benedict XVI in the past. And one of the ideas that emerges in the book, which I've been able to review, is this idea of an anti-Christian creed and social excommunication. And these are really themes that build on a theme that Benedict began at the conclave, at the homily which began the conclave at which he was elected Pope, namely the idea of the dictatorship of relativism. You probably remember during his pontificate, he talked a lot about the idea of a dictatorship of relativism, a way in which relativistic moral thinking or relativistic ethical thinking, the idea that there's not one truth, but many truths can kind of become the predominant social motif, and that all of us are obliged to accept, feel certain social pressures or cultural pressures to accept those ideas. And what Benedict says in the book is that the dictatorship of relativism in a certain way has evolved, such that it's not just that we have to accept that there's only one, that there are many truths, and that one particular idea, one set of ideas can't claim sort of to corner the market on the truth, but that instead modern cultures, he says, are becoming very sort of totalitarian about the truth. They're very exacting about the truth, but a truth that is anti-Christian at its core, and that those who hold Christian principles are sort of shunned from society, even for holding very basic Christian ideas about marriage or the dignity of human life, or or the dignity of the human person. And so he says we're seeing this aggressive sort of development from the idea that there are many truths and they're all equal, to the idea that there are certain social truths to which we must all assent, sort of the modern ethos of homosexuality and abortion and other issues.
And we see that in our current culture in the United States today. If you are opposed to same-sex marriage, obviously you're some type of bigot. You hate people, and you're not entitled to even earn a living in some places. I remember the Proposition 8 situation in California, where people who signed to have that ballot initiative, which was to protect traditional marriage, were hounded, some of them out of jobs. Their businesses were blackballed, and people really went after those people. And a lot of people got hurt. A lot of people did lose their jobs and lost their businesses because they signed a petition simply stating that they believed that traditional marriage, one man, one woman, should be preserved in the state.
That's right. Or you can think about, cake bakers or wedding photographers or other people who faced or lost their livelihood because they choose not to, to put their service at the service of weddings, homosexual weddings with which they don't agree. Or you can think about Canadian dioceses which have begun to lose massive amounts of funding because they won't assent to certain principles about homosexuality and abortion, especially that the government requires them to assent to. So you can see ways in which the church and believers are sort of being just pushed out of the mainstream because this expectation of assenting to sort of modern creed on these issues. And that's exactly what Benedict was talking about in the book.
And it also is bleeding over into the churches. Many Christian leaders have become indoctrinated by defining Christian love as accepting these kinds of anti-Christian behaviors, sinful in most cases, and the congregation then becomes a little more they become indoctrinated into the disorder and the anti-natural beliefs that this propagates.
That's right. I think that's very true, and you can see sort of the way in which that ideology begins to infect more and more Christian denominations, and even sometimes in our own minds, we have to sort of go back and think, okay, what do I really believe? What does the church really teach? And that's why Benedict gives not just the diagnosis of the problem, but points us to the solution, because he says as we see this development of what he calls an anti-Christian creed that we're expected to assent to, he says the only way that we can overcome this is prayer. We have to, he says that the entire church needs to be resisting this sort of force, this force moving towards us, and the only way we can do that is through prayer, which unifies us as a church to the Lord and helps us to stay stronger in what we know to be true, and then helps us all to be clear in our own minds too about what's true and what isn't true. And then the power of prayer, of course, to actually overcome by grace these kinds of things and to sow the seeds of conversion. So the good thing about Benedict is always he's great at diagnosing the problem, but he doesn't stop there because he says prayer is the thing. And then he says, too, when we're on the outside of society, when we're sort of pushed outside of the mainstream because of what we believe, well, then, although we suffer for that, it can also be easier to see what the real cost of discipleship is, the real challenge of Christian discipleship is, but also the joy in the life of the missionary life of a Christian. So he says this is bad. He says for sure this is bad, but he says there are ways in which this can be fruitful for us as believers and fruitful for us as the church.
Well, in a way, we all become martyrs in a way, especially white martyrs, those people who lose economic advantage because of their beliefs, like the people we were talking about before, the bakers, the photographers, and that, for standing up for their beliefs.
That's right. The word martyr is a Greek word that means witness. And so we think of the martyrs as those who are killed for the faith. But all of us who are put in a position of needing, especially to witness to the faith because of the hardship that we endure, are called precisely to that martyrdom. And in that martyrdom, we can be joined to Christ on the cross, who's the witness of the Christian life most dramatically and most poignantly.
So I understand that this book is almost 1,200 pages in its volume, and I understand in 93 years you can have quite a long and historic life that you can make into a biography. In his 93 years, I'm sure he has some words that help us to not be discouraged by this situation.
I think that's right. There's a lot of, for me, in reviewing the book and going through it, I haven't read the whole thing, but I've started reading it and going through it. There is a lot that is encouraging there. And one of the things is he goes back a lot to the messages of hope in his own general audiences. And especially the idea that in the church, as we live the sacramental life of the church, we can always see, if we are self-reflective, we can see the power of God's goodness in the transformation of our own lives. So he keeps coming back to the idea that even if we don't feel like we can see where God is in the world, if we're struggling with that as we look at these things like social excommunication and the anti-Christian creed and the secularization of culture, because we can be assured of God's goodness as we look at the transformation that God gives us in our own hearts through the sacramental life. And especially the joy that comes through that. One of the things that Benedict emphasizes again and again in the book is the joy of the Christian life, especially the joy of closeness to the sacraments. And so he says, we know in the sacraments, if we reflect on the way in which God is changing us, we can see the way in which God is loving us, and that can fill us with joy. So it's really, and that's so much of what Benedict XVI's whole message of really his own pontificate and his work before that was about the joy and the freedom that comes from living a Christian life. And this book, I think, continues on with those themes and sort of tries to witness to them in recounting his own life.
Just a quick note. We have a prayer that Benedict wrote that Gina opens up every program with. So we're kind of fans of his. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I think
he's an incredibly wise man and wonderful shepherd, a leader of all of us.
Yeah, to be sure. I think we've been blessed now with three in recent decades, three very different, but three popes from whom we can learn and from whom we can be inspired in the Christian life in very different ways. And Benedict's right in the middle of that between Pope St. John Paul II and Pope Francis, I think has been influential for a lot of us, to be sure.
I think John Paul and Benedict were the intellectual end of that scale. They seem to be very intellectual in their writing and in their teaching. Yeah,
that's right. I think that's right. And Pope Francis, of course, so often spoken of the power of his witness. And I think during this coronavirus pandemic, we've seen that, so many of these dramatic things that Pope Francis has done, his walking pilgrimage through the streets of Rome, or the striking power of the Urbi et Orbi blessing, in the empty St. Peter's Square. We've seen,
that was a powerful visual.
Yeah, it was. It was incredible, but especially the rain. I mean, you kind of wonder how they planned the rain so well, because it added to the drama of the whole thing. But it was beautiful, wasn't it?
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
So that book will be available sometime this fall. Is that my understanding?
Of the book, which is entitled just simply Benedict XVI, the biography. The first volume of it will come out November the 17th. And then I think the plan, I'm not 100% certain, but I think the plan is to release a volume each year for the next 2 successive years after that.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, JD, we want to thank you for joining us today. We certainly appreciate your input here, and we got you close to Nebraska anyway.
That's right. And thanks so much for having me, and God bless you guys. It's good talking with you.
Certainly. God bless you, too. J.D. Flynn, Editor-in-Chief of the Catholic News Agency. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we will be right back after these messages.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know
Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
What is the best gift ever? Well, some might say a Catholic education, and I agree. But if you think you can't afford Catholic education, think again. Apply for CTO, and you could receive up to half your tuition for kindergarten through 12th grade. More information is online, ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports 365 is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic with 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling Catholic graduate, and Dr. Todd Pedig. The Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, online at ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Doing what is challenging because it's right. That's Blackbird Investments. In 2013, Blackbird Investments was born from the inspiration of St. Kevin. When it comes to building real estate, they look for creative solutions by forming strategic alliances, creating energy-efficient buildings, and engaging with local craftsmen. At its core, Blackbird Investments believes in giving buildings a new life. BlackbirdInvest.com. Blackbird Investments, doing what is challenging because it's right.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. Information about Pharmatan and other products at ImogeneIngredients.com. Paul and Paul are members of St. Augustine's Knights of Columbus and encourage their brother knights to keep standing for their faith. And this is Faith on Trial, Iowa Catholic Radio in Des Moines. Gina, we had an interesting program today, and we had an interesting morning.
That was very interesting to be so contemporary with our story about Governor Cuomo from New York and the nursing home situation with the COVID deaths, in a high number of them in the nursing homes. I couldn't help through that talk with Dr. Ann Hendershot believe that these situations really are able to help us understand how our leaders value the human life. You know, whether it's infants, unborn babies, individuals in nursing homes. What is the value? Do our leaders value one segment of society more than another?
Yeah, and of course, Como has kind of a checkered past in that. And what was interesting is that when it looked like New York was succeeding in controlling the coronavirus, he made the statement that it wasn't God that did it, it was us that did it. Remember that? Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
He's when I heard that.
Yeah, I think he has, if he's had any ambition, because there's a lot of talk right now about buyer's remorse with Joe Biden, that a lot of Democrats are thinking that he's just not the guy they want to head the ticket. They're maybe looking for somebody else. Como seemed to be the one that was sitting right there, kind of ready to go if they could manage a switch. But I think he has kind of shot himself in the foot with a couple of these things here that will not sit well with people. But it depends, I suppose, on how much they pay attention to what's going on. But I think he has, there's been a couple of clinkers in his background recently that I think will not only hurt him now, but it may hurt him in the future. Especially that comment about God didn't do this, we did. And there's the guy who, opened up really almost after birth abortion, the bill that he was so happy to sign into law.
Right. So it was very interesting to get her perspective, and then to have her expand upon that and show us some of the research that she's done that shows that other states have had the same issues. I was glad to hear that she was supportive of the way our state here in Iowa and our governor has been able to help the nursing homes sustain themselves and not blow up in the manner that they have in other states.
And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think Kim Reynolds has done an excellent job. I may be a little bit biased. She was one of my students at one time, but I think she's done an excellent job in handling this situation. And it's a tough situation to be in, and you can see that in the debate today. Do we open? Do we not open? If we open too soon, are we going to have more deaths? If we don't open soon enough, we're going to have people going out of business. I am happy, though, that she did decide to open barbershops. Just a personal thing. I can get rid of my man bun now, get trimmed up and look nice and not have to go shaggy anymore. But that was the worst part for me, was no barber.
Well, honestly, this has been an experience in, and continues to be an experience in good leadership versus inadequate leadership. Sometimes we elect our leaders based on popularity rather than true, strong leadership. And I think it's taught us all a lesson about what to look for in our elected officials, I think.
Yeah, somebody makes prudent decisions. Unlike some places, we have seen them just shut everything down. And of course, you see what's happening in those areas. They are facing an onslaught of protests. And that will probably continue for a while. And then I thought J.D. Flynn's analysis of what Pope Benedict wrote was very good. And we've seen that, but we've maybe sometimes seen it from a more secular position of how this anti-Christian creed is running through the country anymore, running through society. And we see that, you and I follow politics quite a bit because that's part of what we do. And of course, it's part of the field that we have to play on here. And we've seen that anti-Christian creed come out. And I think one of the problems that we face today is there are so many people out there that just cannot, in their heart and in their head, understand why somebody may have a religious problem with doing something. They have a religious problem with abortion. They have a religious problem with same-sex marriage, so they don't want to take part in that type of a ceremony. They have a problem with this transgenderism that's going on. People are conditioned to see that as an issue of some type of right that these people have. Women have to kill their baby. Same-sex couples have to marry. A person has to want to change their sex if that's really possible, and they are embracing so much this me culture that we have the right to do this, that they and they also then want us to go along, not just to tolerate it, but to accept it. And like you pointed out in the interview, we have these photographers and bakers and things like that they don't want to participate. It's not that they hate these people, they just don't want to participate in their same-sex ceremony or whatever it is, and as a result, they're then classified as bigots and haters, and it's a lack of understanding. You see that a little bit with the opening of the after the coronavirus. There's been a lot, if you watch the stuff on the internet, about how these people that are protesting that want governors and mayors to open up their cities a little bit more, how selfish they must be because it's going to cause more deaths. They don't understand that these people are dying at home. They can't get medical services because it's not an emergency, so they can't get their hips replaced. They can't get their chemotherapy. They can't get a lot of things. They're losing their businesses. They're losing their jobs. They don't quite. There's no empathy anymore with somebody on the other side, and I think that's a sad commentary on our society today.
Well, and I think Benedict understands true love and compassion and the bigger picture and the consequences of accepting the behaviors that are disordered and the consequences to society and to the individual. And like I said, he's 93 years old. It amazes me that he continues to be involved in our journey as Christians in a very loving way. And I'm really glad to hear that he's taken on this project and allowed a biography to be written about much of his life.
I for one miss him. But anyway, that's about all the time that we have for today. Do want to send a shout out to Paul and Paul at Imogene Ingredients for helping sponsor our program, and certainly today, Catlin Murphy, who helped us arrange some guests at the last minute when things were falling through on us. We actually, about 10 minutes before the program, had no guests because of one thing or another, but we got it put together, and Catlin was a big help in doing that. So let's close with our prayer to St. Michael. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits that roam about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. That's it for this week. Join us. Next week, we have two guests that I think are going to be very interesting. We have Mike Gonzalez of the Heritage Foundation is going to talk about kind of this left-wing school history program called the 1619 Project. And then Christopher Farrar, who is the special counsel for the Thomas More Society, is going to join us on a lawsuit that he's filed against New Jersey for cops who have been disrupting religious services. So those will be two interesting guests. And I hope we have two interesting guests next week. We don't go through some of the gyrations we had to this morning. But anyway, thank you for listening. For Gina and myself, we certainly appreciate that. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. We will see you next Thursday.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial, Thursdays at 10 a.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.